Okay, so we're gonna be live in a sec.
See how just before you do that, see how my image comes over. Is it at a tilt or is it straight ahead or what? Based on what you
Okay,
got.
that's gonna yeah. Okay, that's gonna take. Just give me a sec. All right. Okay. All right, boys and girls. Brother Leroy's turned his video back on. Okay, you gotta. I just told you to do it. You gotta click it on yourself.
Oh, I see.
Okay,
Okay,
but we ready though. We ready with the brothers ready. I'm ready. We're on YouTube.
okay.
Do your thing.
And this is the Wisdom Table coming to you from the Grand Houses Community Residence in Harlem, USA, 125th Street and Amsterdam Avenue. The Wisdom Table does not reflect the views, attitudes, whims, deeds, or any other proclivities of the management of the NYCHA development. Neither does the views that expressed here on the Wisdom Table reflect anything regarding the resident council of the Grand Houses. However, the program does reflect the research done by the participants in the program Live and Live in Color by Zoom. And today's program is Understanding Minister Louis Farrakhan. And we have invited a guest who is one of his ministers, student ministers here in New York City, student minister Henry Muhammad. Thank you for joining us on the Wisdom Table.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me, beloved.
And the title of the show that we've invited you to participate in relates directly to a lot of the younger generations of Black youth, Black folks do not know fully anything about the Nation of Islam, anything about Minister Louis Farrakhan outside of brief mentions on, let's say, TV or negative portrayals of him on the internet or in so-called popular media. So we've invited you so that we can get some insight. It's a series of interviews we're doing, and you're the number one along the lines of giving an understanding to Minister Farrakhan. So the first question is, what is the value of Black youth knowing and understanding Minister Farrakhan today in 2020?
Okay. First, I would like to begin all things in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful. Assalamu alaikum to all my family. Peace be unto you. I want to thank you, Brother Leroy, and the staff of the Wisdom Table in Harlem for having me on to be able to share and give my own testimony, if you will, of this great brother of ours and friend of ours and giant from among us, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. The value of Black youth having, can you repeat it again? The wisdom?
The having a value of knowing and understanding Minister Louis Farrakhan.
Okay. I would take that, I would answer that question from this vantage point, looking at my own experience, because I came into the knowledge of the minister in my early 20s and been following him now for over 30 years. And the value of this, of knowing him and knowing of him and having this knowledge for me, and I would think for all youth coming up, is a matter of life and death. It's a matter of success in our growth and development in regards to what is expected of us as young men and young women coming up in society, because that knowledge allows you and I to be able to make the right decision in the crossroads of life and get rid of the stereotypical portrayal that has been put upon us as Black people, especially Black youth coming up. And it helps you to also ward yourself and discipline yourself against following the wrong path, you know. And so knowing Minister Farrakhan and having a knowledge of him and being able to hear his voice and getting to what he teaches is really that kind of standard that gets placed in the mindset of the youth that they can start weighing themselves by spiritually, mentally, and physically.
Okay, Minister Farrakhan is, when one hears Minister Farrakhan, one tends to hear a fiery speaker or a very mild-mannered speaker, depending on the venue and circumstances. But all the time he comes out of the scriptures, the Bible, the Holy Quran, and I'm not too sure that the youth of today is deeply aware of anything, even the 23rd Psalm in the Bible. He uses the Bible as a context for talking about the uniqueness of Black youth today after 400 some odd years of enslavement of Black people here in the wilderness of North America. What is that significance of Black youth? What is the value of the Black youth to the perpetuation of Black people today in America?
The value of Black youth today and the significance in regards to dealing with the scriptures of the Bible, as the minister would use, is that they are the promise of the future, because it is written in the scriptures. And I would say this in part of what you had mentioned in your in preparation to this question. The scriptures talk about us, and it's in a coded language. And anytime we hear the minister go into the scriptures as a young man or a young woman who've never read the scriptures before, because he makes it so plain, it inspires you to want to go and find that scripture yourself. But the value that's shown through the scriptures is that we are descendants of those who God had already ordained to be taken from what is known as Africa, brought into this land called America, and be despised and rejected, kidnapped from our homeland, brought here, despised and rejected for 400 years. And after that time, God is saying he will come. And the minister makes that scripture plain to us to show that there's no other people that fits that description but the Black man and woman in North America, as a people who was taken from taken into a strange land among a strange people. And so when the minister makes that plain and then tells us about the 400-year journey and lets us know that we've been here since 1555, and from 1555 to 1955 made it 400 years, then it makes the Black youth start looking at that history. And then he'll let you know that, okay, I know they've been telling you 1619. There's 64 years of hidden history, and then start explaining how in that 64 years of hidden history, the Black man and woman, our ancestors that were first brought over here, were broken for 2 generations, to whereas a detachment was made to turn us inside out and upside down, so that by the time they started working on us on those plantations after that 64 years, we didn't know or couldn't connect to our heritage. So when a Black person hears that, they've never heard it before, so it already strikes the intrigue, and then he starts explaining our condition and saying that the 400 years is up and now God is present, and that's why I'm able, Minister Farrakhan, to speak the way that I'm speaking, because God is after you, Black man, and it's your time to take over, and that's why you don't want to listen to nobody else, because everyone else has failed, and you don't want to follow their education because their education is not their education is not for you. You don't see yourself in their school books. You don't see yourself in their history, but God has made it this way because he wants you for himself. And this is why they don't want you to listen to Farrakhan. All of those things start letting a young Black man and a young Black woman realize that they are valuable, when all my life, all I've been doing is getting kicked to the side. All my life, all I've been doing is being told that I'm nothing. And then inside of my own nature, or inside of my own being, I've always felt that something was missing. When they hear Farrakhan, they start hearing the missing piece. When they hear Farrakhan, they start getting more inspired and more inquisitive, you know? And so that starts stirring up something in their soul that has been sitting there all along, and they make the connection. You know, I've heard time and time again, so many of our youth and so many people that we speak to say that when they hear the minister, there's things that he says that instantly they know it to be the truth, even though they never heard it before. It's inside of them. They can tell that what he said is right and exact. They just could not articulate it the way he said it, but somewhere in themselves, they feel they already knew that.
Can we go into that for a moment?
Yes,
And
sir.
that is, they hear the word, they hear the minister, or they hear one of his ministers,
Yes, sir.
and there's a connection made. How is that connection explained? Is it mental? Is it physical? Is it DNA? What is it?
Well, you know, it's all of the above, because it's all in our DNA, but it's charged from the mental and the spiritual that starts to give the inertia to the physical. And I'll say it from this aspect: the knowledge itself is the knowledge of God, and with that knowledge of God is coupled the knowledge of self. And when someone has been robbed, such as us, of our knowledge of who we really are and our connection to our creator, not just dealing with a landmass and the geographical location of what is known as Africa, but our connection to the creator that created sun, moon, stars, and planets. And then it's being able to be made plain to us that in that connection, that we are the very essence of everything that's in existence. And we're able to be shown that even when it comes down to the plants, even when it comes down to the vegetation of the earth, all of that is in the vegetation of our bodies, and that we can look at ourselves and see that we're connected to the vegetables and the vegetable is connected to us. When someone's able to make that as plain as that, as such as the minister and his students of the teachings of Honorable Elijah Muhammad, known as his student ministers around the nation, then there's a connection being made that with that knowledge, entering into the ears of people who've never heard it before, that's connecting to their brain, is starting to produce a certain kind of energy, which is really the meaning of spirit. Because with that knowledge and that energy, it creates a spirit that moves the average individual into another inspiration to want to do better for themselves and better in their lives. And instantly they start realizing, I knew I could do more. I knew that there was something missing, and now I got it. So now that spirit and that wave has to be ridden, because once that's happening, what we're understanding is, as we are taught by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and Minister Farrakhan, thought travels on air, and thoughts are things. So when we think about our ancestors, ancient ancestors from going all the way back into ancient antiquity, when we think about all of the ancestors and we think about all of the prophets and we think about the sages and all those spiritual people, they lived, they taught, they spoke, they died. But just because physically they're gone, that which they taught is still in the atmosphere, because thoughts are things. And when you and I hear a word coming from the minister like such as that, it dates all the way back into the ancestors, which dates all the way back into our DNA, which allows any of us that hear it and take it on to get up into that frequency of thought. And that's what I think happens to the youth, because I know that's what happened to me. You start getting up into the frequency of thought of the prophets. You start getting up into the frequency of thought of the messengers. You start getting up into the frequency of thought of our ancestors, and then there's an action that has to take place with that. So to be up in that frequency of thought and don't have no training ground or guidance to take you along with it, then it's short-circuited. But the way the Nation of Islam is set up and the way the minister has been guiding us, after you hear that word, then that word has to be made in the flesh. And we have a whole training program that's conditioned and designed and tailor-made for the condition of black men, the black man and woman in America. And so that's, I think, is what also adds to the DNA of it all, because it starts dealing, this teaching starts dealing in the nature of the individual. And when you got individuals that's coming up out of the oppression of over 460 some odd years now, and have been conditioning themselves according to God's way of life under the voice of a man from among us, then we know how to deal with others that are coming up out of that same mud of civilization with love. So there's another connection there that makes it valuable for the youth coming up, because now this youth are the ones that are destined to take it to the next level. And what I mean by that, we've always talked about the fall of America. And as this system of government starts to fall, there's another group that has to come up and be prepared to take the place of those that were in place with a whole new mindset. And the youth that have been brought up today, the minister has said to us time and time again that this is the best generation that we've ever produced, because they're fearless and they're not willing to accept nothing from no one. God has turned their ear against everyone in society and saved them just for himself. And it's not by coincidence that when the youth hear the minister, they understand him immediately. And it's not by coincidence that every time he comes out, thousands come out to hear him like they will not do for anyone else. So there's a lot of value in that.
I want to go back to frequency of thought and deal with a visual. The frequency of thought of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and Brother Minister Farrakhan, if we looked at thought as, in this case, as being layers, and the more immediate level of thought among our people and among American people, actually among the world, but I'm dealing with us, there is the materialism frequency of thought. I'm gonna use that. And above that, to come out of that into a frequency of thought of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad is to rise to a higher level of thinking. I'm just looking at it as layers. How accurate might that be?
Yeah, that's very accurate to be able to paint that kind of picture, because it is in layers. And you know, when we start thinking about thought, we have to meet people where they are in their own thought process. And someone may say, well, how are you going to meet somebody where they are in their own thought process when it's your first time meeting them? You don't know them. But no, we know the society and we know the trend of society. So when you deal with the trend of society and knowing that, as well as we are in the Nation of Islam and as others are who are interested in the liberation of their people, you stay in tune with the trends of society by the news, the newspapers, and being in the community among the people. So if we already know, just as you mentioned on the material side, that this country is fashioned on capitalism, materialism, racism, sexism, and nationalism. So when you start speaking into those different avenues, then you can start getting people into a certain frequency of thought that they all can agree with. And that's what the minister does. But then once he gets them into that certain frequency of thought and then makes them see the root of that frequency of thought and how it's detrimental to their development, then he gives them interjects another level of thought to look at. But interjecting that other level of thought, it has to be to the point where it's compatible to the frequency of thought you're already in. For example, we can talk about the material things of life, having nice clothes, having a nice car, having the latest fashionable watch, and so forth. But then we have to bring into existence, well, you are not just material. You're also spiritual. And the material that covers your spiritual side is really the real you. So when I look at you and I see what you're wearing, that's letting me know on a level of what you put on today, I can tell what was on your mind by the shirt you have on, the pants you have on, the shoes you have on. That's what was on your mind. However, in order for me to know that, I would have to look at the physical, but there's also something behind that. And that's when the minister will start letting us know and talking to people about, when you look at your physical eye, there's an eye behind the physical eye. So let's think about that on the level of God and what moves us as a people where God is concerned. The scripture is always talking about the physical and the spiritual. You know, you have Adam and Eve, you have the earth, you have the herbs of the field. And when you start talking to people about that and bringing it up into modern day and time of how these different levels are here, then you can let them know that it's not the physical that rules you. It's not the material that rules you. It's really your mental and spiritual that rules the material. So to have a nice car and have a nice house, but be empty on the inside means that you look like you have all the good things, but you in hell. So we want to be able to show you how you can have heaven on earth by having a proper state of mind and the proper frequency of thought, that by doing that, you'll start bringing into existence all of the physical things that you desire and want, but it'll be done in a righteous way. And please let me know, cut me off, because I don't want to be long-winded, brother. I'm just, I'm kind of
I'm letting you finish your thought. That's most important. And we'll pick through it when we have to. The aspect of the frequency of thought on a higher level, coming into the frequency of thought of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, Minister Louis Farrakhan, that when that young brother or sister hears that message and it resonates with them, they are now under obligation.
You're tuned in to GHCR.NYC, Grant Houses Community Radio, home of the Community News Service and the soul of the Upper West Side.
And this is the black soul of the Upper West Side.
Come on now. Yes, sir.
Grand Houses Community Radio, and it's black when Brother Leroy is on. The young brother, the young sister hearing the message, whether it's by way of Lost Sheep Productions contained within the context of music or straight ahead clip from Ben X, etc., they are obligated to pursue understanding based on that feeling, that resonation. So they just can't be moved by something and not act on it. I'm just with the responsibility today. The responsibility, as I understand it, is delivering the message, and equal to that is that those who receive it to act on it.
Yes, sir.
Comment. Your comment.
So with that is, if you don't do it, it falls into what we know to be the formula for insanity. Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. You can't sit there and listen to high wisdom and truth and ooh and ah about it and then don't act on it. You have to act on it. So as we are taught, and as it says in the scriptures, in the beginning was the Word was God, the Word was with God, then that Word became flesh. So yes, everyone starts out with hearing the Word and they're moved by it. And most times what we find is that those individuals that are moved by the Word, whether they heard it through a clip from Ben X, as you said, or whether they heard it through something from Lost Sheep Productions or something they seen on social media, then they start searching for more of that which fed their soul, because God is all in it. And and that's why I think it comes back down to what you was asking about with the DNA. It connects to the soul of the individual, and it starts calling them from within and from without. And it makes them want to find out, okay, where can I get more of that? There are some people right now throughout the time of COVID, being in quarantine, that have walked up to the mosque wanting to join the Nation of Islam because of something they heard on social media while they was in quarantine, And so it's that kind of power. But I think also, brother, circumstances and conditions prepare the individual youth for this word. You know, as the minister has taught sometimes in different lectures, he says the lower you are in your condition, the higher you're going to rise with the word of God.
Mm.
And so the more that we go through oppression in our communities, death and destruction and mayhem, the more we're being ripened to want God in our life. And some don't even really realize that's what it is until they hear that word and they see, oh, this is the piece of the missing puzzle in my life. I need this because no one's speaking to me about this. No one's speaking into this part of my being. And in all actuality, that part of the being that I see the minister speaks into that many others don't is the love for the individual, the care for the individual. It's not about your material clothing, how much money you got or anything like that. It's about really working on the heart of your thinking and the heart of your soul. And when people hear that, they can tell that they're hearing God's voice. They're hearing someone that's not talking at them, but trying to speak right into them. And I think that's really what makes them more attracted to this kind of frequency of thought. But there's another aspect to it that we must address, and that is the individual that's speaking has to also be living up to what they're talking about. Because to talk righteousness and to talk God and not be living God, the people today can see right through that. And, you know, one of the analogies that I will use for that is, as we were trained in the FOI, you know, just as a dog can smell fear, a people that have been put into a savage state of condition can smell fear too, and also sense when someone is not really being real with them. And so if you're coming among your people and we're coming among our people and we live among them, but we're in the world and not of the world, meaning that we're not living according to the standard of life that most are living by. We're not drinking, we're not smoking, we're not chasing women, we're not chasing men, we're not carrying any weapons, we're not being the aggressor, you know, we're making sure we're eating right, physically as well as mentally, and we're learning more and more about God and self, and we love ourselves and we love our people, and we teach love in our family according to God's way, laws, rules, and regulations. So then when we go after our people, it's with such affection and love for them, because we believe and know that they are the lost sheep that is talked about in the Bible. They are those people that have been lost from God for over 400 years, and God set up the condition and now is coming after them. Then it's hard for them to resist someone that's coming to them with the love of God, but the firmness of a real man and the firmness of a lion. You know, it's hard for them to resist that, because they can tell from our spirit and what we say and our presence that the transparency is that is real righteousness and it's not phony.
I want to deal with this statement that the Muslims make, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad makes in Message to the Black Man, and that is that God has come for us. This is how he phrases it. How can that be proven? What are the indicators that God has come for Black people in America? What can be pointed to?
The Nation of Islam. You know, and you know, just to be real plain and simple with that, but the indicators is looking at the circumstances and the conditions of what's going on with Black people in America. You know, everyone else has turned us down, turned their back on us. You know, it is written that that would happen, as we said before. You know, we would be despised and rejected for 400 years. You know, everyone else has had their chance to be on top. Every other nationality, every other, you know, spectrum of color, if you will. But the Black man and woman has been put on the bottom constantly. And so we're in a condition that only God can get us out of. When we start thinking about and looking at the race problem, Black people don't have no freedom, justice, or equality under this construct that's known as the American way of life, this system of government in America. Everything that we try to do to meet up to the bar that America sets as a standard for us in every facet of life. Every time we get up to that bar, they raise the bar up higher. Every time we make some kind of leverage of stride in life, they move the goal up higher again, or someone circumvents it. And it almost seems like we can't do nothing. We'll never be together. And, you know, for lack of a better term, there's a statement that, you know, Black people will make out of frustration, you know, degrading themselves and calling themselves as they say now, the N word. And they'll say an N ain't nothing, an N will never be nothing. And that's why I don't like to be around N's, you know. And that's really so much self-hatred and degradation against ourselves. But it is in that condition that God comes in the midst of it. And when you look at what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad has brought and what he has done from 1934 all the way up to 1975, and then Minister Farrakhan picking it up from 1977 up till now. Everything the nation has done, Nation of Islam has done, all of our accomplishments, none of it has been with the help of the government, the assistance of the government, no big donations given to us to back us up like they back up other churches and organizations. We've done everything we've done based off of us coming together in unity and love in the name of God, putting our poor people's nickels and dimes together and using the word of God to take us out of this condition. When you just mentioned a statement from Message to the Black Man, one of the things that the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan pointed out to us about what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad did, and Message to the Black Man is proof of it. Here's the man born out of Sandersville, Georgia, 1897, son of sharecroppers, son of slaves, third grade education, and said he met God in person. And God taught him for 3.5 years, night and day, and then sent him to teach us. And from that time of 1934 on, he started teaching us. But when you look in Message to the Black Man, as I have, you find that most of Message to the Black Man is the teachings that Honorable Elijah Muhammad is quoting the Bible, but yet we are Muslims. So here's a man that used the Bible to make us Muslims. Now tell me God ain't involved in that. The average Christian will look at that and be like, what? Yes, he used the Bible to make us Muslims. And as you go through Message to the Black Man, you see it. It starts off, he's talking about God, and then he got Allah in parentheses. And then a few chapters later, after he gets you used to reading about God and seeing Allah in parentheses, next thing you know, he's talking about Allah and got the word God in parentheses. He's teaching us all the way through in such a beautiful way on how to accept the proper name for God, but at the same time, growing us into our true nature, which is Muslim. And a Muslim is one who submits his or her will to do the will of God. And a Muslim is one that wants peace and exudes peace. So he's teaching us that, but he's bringing it to us through the Bible, because it was through the Bible that our enemies, sons and daughters of the slave master, made us other than ourselves. They lied to us through the scriptures. So he starts giving us a proper way to understand the scriptures, you know, and it's through that Bible, because he knows that that's the way we've been raised. Mostly of us was raised through Christianity, but he's given us true Christianity and making us in a subtle way a true Christian, a Christ figure, one who's following Christ, you know, because he teaches us that a true Christian is one who follows Jesus the Christ into the way of God. And Jesus Christ is like, Jesus is not his first name and Christ is not his last name, but to be a follower of Christ is to be that one that's going to walk with the way that Christ walked, you know, into the way of God. And so I find it very profound to look into Message to the Black Man and see from the teachings of Honorable Elijah Muhammad that this man stood up in America and took the Bible and used the words and the teachings of the Bible and the prophets and gave us the understanding of those prophecies, but through it all was making us into Muslims. And with that, you know, we used to always hear, and I used to hear about how many of the followers in the 40s, 50s, and 60s, you know, were suffering from drugs and alcohol and so forth. And after meeting and hearing the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, they were able to give up the alcohol. They was able to give up the drugs. They didn't have to go to no methadone clinics or nothing like that. All of that was done through the temples of Islam. And of course, brother Leroy, you were one of those that was a part of the helpers that was helping in that day and time, and still here now. So it's good to have you as one of our elders that we can look to and lean on. You helped Minister Farrakhan make New York and rock New York in the way that they did from 65 to 75. But I'm saying this to say that's what the nation was known for, of taking ex-drug users and alcoholics and those that was in prison to come out and be able to reform their life. But at a certain point, the college students started coming in. The attorneys started coming in, the doctors started coming in, but that still didn't take away from the work of Muhammad when it came down to the very, very downtrodden. And some people would say, well, you know, the nation is good for getting ex-drug dealers and dope pushers and this, that, and the other. That's not bad. That is a credit to show that God is after our people and God is working through this nation of Islam and the teachings of Honorable Elijah Muhammad. I say all that to say that still goes on to this very day. When I came into the mosque, I had a lot of different habits that I was dealing with from being out in that concrete jungle, smoking, drinking, chasing women, being a womanizer, and all of that. But it was the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and I never met the man. By the time I got on the scene, he was gone. I was reading Message to the Black Man and getting inspired, and then heard Minister Farrakhan, who gave me a better understanding of what I thought I understood in Message to the Black Man. But I would say this, just reading on that word from the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and him being able to tell me that I'm living other than myself because I don't love myself. The reason why I'm quick to cut my brother is because I hate myself. The reason why I call my brother out of his name is because I hate myself. The reason why I'm treating my woman the way I'm treating her is because I don't know the proper way to deal with a woman. I don't know that she's a woman of God. And I'm listening to this and thinking about it and saying, wow, this sounds correct. I just can't, I don't know how I would articulate it to someone else. And then I heard Farrakhan. And he gave me a deeper understanding of what Elijah Muhammad had been saying to us from God. And when I first heard him say, how could you disrespect a woman when that very same woman you're disrespecting could be like your niece, your auntie, your sister? Would you do that to them? How could you call her out of her name? When she was a little girl coming up, was she a bee then? She was innocent. So if she's acting other than herself now, who did it? He said, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, wherever you find a no good woman, there was a no good man that made her that way. All these things started hitting the mindset and hits the mindset of our people. So once again, I'm saying it's that word of God coming through the Honorable Elijah Muhammad that people try to figure out what is making these people change. How are their lives being reformed? It's the word and the teaching and training that comes along with that word that has reformed people like myself, yourself, and thousands, hundreds of thousands of others. And people know, some of them don't want to believe it, because in all actuality, I think a lot of people that's in religion and swear by God don't really believe in the power of God.
Wait a minute, explain that.
Because how could we have, and when it comes down to Christianity, Islam, when it comes down to Judaism or Hebrew Israelites, all of it is coming from God himself. And the labels that are there, we can get past the labels. But my thing is this: throughout all the time while I was on the street in that world, before coming into the understanding or the knowledge of these teachings, I was seeing churches on every corner. I mean, in some of the blocks, it would be 3, 4 churches on the block, you know, and there would also be people going down giving Bible tracts, and there would also be different Muslims going around with the Ansar Allah community in New York and things of that nature. And I would see the Hebrew Israelites. But even as they're going back and forth through the streets, drug dealers is walking on them same pathways right by them, peddling drugs and doing all kinds of things. There's men walking around scheming on individuals, lurking around to try to rob somebody and all that. Well, with all these people around, with all this knowledge of God, why wasn't no effect being taking place in the community? But as soon as I started seeing those coming under the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad come into the community, the drug dealer would show respect to them. The number runner would show respect to them. The doggone prostitute would show respect. I mean, when I say show respect, I mean that they would curb themselves when they see the Muslims come through. They wouldn't be disrespectful if the Muslim in that suit and bow tie approached them and started talking to them about the conditions of the community and wanting to do something about the community. They wouldn't be disrespectful if the Muslim came through and just started selling the final call of the Muhammad speech right on that same corner where they was trying to sell their drugs, that they would move, because there was a whole different thing going on here. We can't be afraid of our people and say we fear nobody but God. We can't be talking down on our people when we're servants of God and we're supposed to be serving God in the people. If they've been made and put in a condition where they're deaf, dumb, and blind, slaves to mental death and power, then if we know they're in that condition and we're there to save them, then I don't come into Christianity or come into Islam or come into Judaism to become selfish. We're supposed to come into it, take on what we get from it, and then go out into the atmosphere and the highways and byways and exhort our people to this kind of knowledge, this kind of truth, to help them change their lives, and not just with the word alone, but action that comes along with the word. And that's what I saw as a big difference in the communities and in my life. And I see a lot of other people highlight that about the Muslims. But the thing that I'm starting to see even more of and bear witness to, that the minister has said to us time and time again, you know, he would say, you know, many of you treat Farrakhan like he's an entertainer. Like I just come out to make you feel good with some good speeches, and then you go back to doing what you do. And it made me realize from the minister's words that what I think a lot of our people don't want to accept, and this is in connection to what was just said, they don't want to accept the divinity in a man, a human being. They can talk about Jesus, who's of 2,000 years ago, who's not here on the scene. Moses of 4,000 years ago, who's not here on the scene. Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, of 1,400 years ago, who's not here on the scene. They can talk about Abraham, but those people are not here. But you'll swear by their divinity, and these are human beings. But there's one right in front of you who is of divine, and to be of divine is meaning that you're from God. All of us come from the Creator, so all of us are divine. But when our divinity is able to show forth, why is it that people don't want to believe in the divinity of another person? You'll hear them say, Mr. Farrakhan is a good speaker. He's got very good oratorical skills. And he's very energetic. He's a powerful man. His words inspire everyone. You know, the fruit of Islam, I love when they're in the community. They make sure the community is secure. The FOI, fruit of Islam, are not security guards. The fruit of Islam are men of God. They're saviors, soldiers, and redeemers. But there's this depiction that's put out there that we're just there for security. We're to stand post and hold security. No, these are men of God. These are men that pray every day. These are men that not only bow down and pray, they watch what they eat physically and mentally. And these are men that live by the law of God. So the law of the land is like child's play to us because we hold a higher law in respect, which is the law of God. And I'm saying all that to say, what is missing in the minds of many of our people, I think, is that they're so busy looking at the physical. They don't see the divine essence that's moving the physical of the FOI, the MGT, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. We live right in the same communities with our people, but we're not suffering with what our people are suffering with because we have accepted the nature and presence of God in our life. And so I would say that to say a key part of that's missing, that was said early on, is the knowledge of God as a human being. That's a very missing key. Many people talk it, but when it comes down to accepting that no, God is man and man is God, that becomes the bridge that's in between those who are successful versus those who are being short-circuited with their success.
Brother Minister Henry, the points that you just hit, I think part of a problem among Black people is the image of Black people in America has been so degraded that they can't see themselves, we can't see ourselves as worthy of God coming. And then in the message that is in Message to the Black Man, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and Minister Farrakhan teach this, that the Black man is God. So when you look out on the street, you see the shootings that are hyped and the mayhem that goes on on the domestic front, whether it's fighting or arguing or just plain people being lazy, whatever. How can that group of people be worthy of God coming? How could that group of people even be considered to be gods themselves? Your comment.
You know, brother, that's one of the sad problems of today, because time dictates the agenda, and time is very important in this hour. And our people, just as you said, and we say and know, they are God by nature, but the circumstances and conditions have made them and us into children of a lesser God. In other words, we've been fighting for a long time for the minds and hearts of our people. But when I say make that statement, many may wonder, well, why are we fighting for the minds and hearts of our people? Who has their mind and their heart? Well, they definitely don't have it themselves. This white man has the minds and hearts of our people, and it's based out of false doctrines, lies that have been told to us for so many centuries, and in this case, we would just say for the last 150 years, because we know that we went over 3 centuries without being given any kind of knowledge, not even being allowed to read or receive any pay or anything, or know anything about our history or even speak our language. But when we was allowed to get any education, it's all been false education. So for people that have been made deaf to themselves and blind to the knowledge of God and the knowledge of self, we've been fighting by God's permission to bring a knowledge to our people that lets them know their history, lets them know themselves, and lets them know God, that they may be able to pull up on that kind of knowledge to be reformed. However, in the midst of this fight, there's an enemy fighting against us. And that's another thing that, Brother Leroy, I think a majority, or at least 85% of our population, don't consider that we all have a natural enemy that could not have ever been in the position of power that they are in if they didn't stand on our backs and on our necks to get in that power. And in order for them to stay in power, they got to stay on our neck and stay on our back. And we're trying to fight with our people to accept the knowledge of themselves and the knowledge of God and expose the lies that have been taught to them all this time so that they can get this enemy off their neck. He's on their neck, meaning he's riding the thought process of their own brain and their own mind. For instance, brother, you know how most people will think, well, you got to wear black to funerals. Well, who told you got to wear black to funerals?
Right.
You see, most people would think, well, in order for me to get married, I got to go down to the justice of the peace and this, that, and the other, or we got to make sure in our wedding that we're going to jump the broom because that's respect to our ancestors with slavery. No, it's not. Where did you get that from? On Valentine's Day, I got to make sure I get my girl a card. And on Thanksgiving, we got to have turkey. And on Christmas, we got to do. Those are none of our holidays. Those are holidays that's made up by the Europeans that have had our people enslaved and oppressed all this time. So what I'm saying is, if you're living like that and you're following that, then you're not living from your own mind. It's someone else's mind. So, when I think about that, it makes me go back to what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad would always say over and over again. I would read it in a message to the black man. And it used to this point used to kind of irk me. And it would be, he would say, the reason why you're doing that is because you worship the white man. And here I am as a conscious individual now, reading his writing and saying to myself, well, I don't worship the white man. I'm conscious and I don't worship the white man. Why does he keep saying that? But when you think deep into it, if at the root of the thought of the average black man and woman.
You're tuned in to GHCR.NYC, Grant Houses Community Radio.
If at the root of their thought, at the base of it, is something that came from what the oppressor has taught us, then that's who's really living in our mind. In other words, if I'm going to eat 3 meals a day and it's all based off of because that's the way I was raised. Well, okay, that's the way your mother and father raised you with 3 meals a day and that's what you do. Okay, who taught them that? Who taught them that? And then if at the end of it, it comes down to some European, then what makes it right? Now, I'm not saying young children shouldn't have proper meals throughout the day, but at a certain age, that's supposed to stop and start diminishing from 3 to 2 and from 2 to 1. But when we start talking about, well, you should only have 1 meal a day, people, well, where you get that from? I never heard that before. Well, what you're really saying is, show me a book that's written by some Caucasian who is a doctor with a PhD that's saying it's all right to eat 1 meal a day. Many of us don't want to accept knowledge coming from ourselves, which is a clear sign of what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said. You don't love yourself. And so for a man like Minister Farrakhan in this modern day and time with the Nation of Islam to try to get our people to understand that you are God, you have force and power within yourself that you have not tapped into, that allows you to really reconnect to the nature of self, which is the creative force of the creator. And with that kind of power, it makes you limitless in your growth, development, and success. It's hard for them to believe if you're constantly looking to see if the standard of the white man is going to be an acceptable standard for this new knowledge that's coming from Minister Farrakhan. I got to see if he will accept it. No, that kind of low self-esteem is part of our problem. So then there has to be an example. And that's what Minister Farrakhan has been doing for the past 43 years, and the Nation of Islam has been doing, setting the example that we can live right in the same country and make progress, even in opposition of our enemy, when we know that at the end of the day, our faith is in a power that you don't see, an unseen power, that God is backing us. And when you look at us, man, I mean, hands down, this is not to put no one else down. The Nation of Islam is the only group in America, the only Black group in America that had rose up in America and was attacked by the most powerfulest government in America, just like all the other groups. Black Panther Party, SNCC, everything, and was destroyed, but the Nation of Islam is the only one that rose back up. And then many people may look and say, well, you know, so okay, I can understand that, but that don't mean we all need to be in the nation. The Nation of Islam is all Black people. We're in the vanguard position to inspire the people to do for self. It's not expected for everybody to join the nation. But the other point that I'm making with that is this: for every one of our heroes and sheroes in leadership over the history of our sojourn in America, the only one that you can point to that had a disciple that came up after him and kept things the way that that leader started it is the Nation of Islam and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. Where's the disciple for Martin Luther King Jr.? Where's the disciple for Marcus Garvey? Where's the disciple for Noble Drew Ali? And we respect all of them. But where's their disciple that God blessed that one with that would keep it going? That this shows and proves that what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad represented as a messenger, the messenger of God, the Lamb of God, it proves to us Minister Farrakhan and his work with the Nation of Islam authenticates what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad presented before us when he was among us.
Brother Minister Henry, we're going to hit some points real quick. And a very critical one is Black man, Black woman relations. You touched on it earlier in terms of the imagery that Black men tend to portray of Black women. And I'm not beating up on Black men. I'm just dealing with our inner dialogue. What is there in the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and promoted by Minister Farrakhan? He's done a lot in terms of respect for the Black woman. He's done a lot of articles on love. What are some of the things you would draw from that to shore up, to strengthen the relationships that are in the home and should be in the home? And when I say should be in the home, you got those who are married, those who have not married, but they've been living together, et cetera, and they have families, et cetera. Touch on some of the critical issues as it relates to your experience in the Nation of Islam and the teachings of Minister Farrakhan, et cetera.
In Message to the Black Man, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad says that the Black woman must be respected, protected, and controlled. He said the woman is man's field to work out in. On the surface, in this today's society and the way that, you know, women's live and the feminist attitude plays things out, that can seem offensive to a virgin ear, so to speak, because women love to hear, yeah, the Black woman should be respected and protected. But when you start talking about control, then it's like, ain't nobody controlling me, you know? And the Honorable Elijah Muhammad also has said, you know, wherever you find a no good woman, there's a no good man that made her that way. I bring up these 2 points because these are the 2 points that stuck out for me in my younger days coming into the knowledge of the teachings of the Nation of Islam. Wherever you find a no good woman, there's a no good man that made her that way. I took offense to that when I first heard it. Like, man, please. But when the more that you think about it, the minister showed us what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was giving us is that that young girl, from the time she was born, was an innocent, beautiful child. If there's any corruption in her life, oftentimes it's based off of when she started getting into a relationship. And some people will say, nah, it's not like that. But, you know, it could have been her upbringing, but whatever her upbringing was, there was some effect against her mother based off of her relationship with her father that ends up transitioning to how she's being treated as she's coming up in the home. Or there's someone that molested her, or there's someone that did, you know, different things that would affect her growth and development. So if the Black woman must be respected, protected, and controlled, we can't respect her, we can't protect her, and we can't get control over her if we don't have a proper knowledge of who she is as a woman. So the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, she's not man's woman, she's God's woman. He said the nature, and that's the knowledge that's needed for us to know the nature of the woman, meaning when you go into the foundation of her existence, it's from the Creator. So to get a better understanding of the woman, you got to have an understanding of the Creator. So now Minister Farrakhan comes along and he says, well, in the male is the X and the Y chromosome. It has both the male and the female part. And the X chromosome is in the woman. He said, well, in mathematics, the X is unknown. He said, brother, there's certain things about yourself that you don't know until you get into a relationship with a woman, because the unknown part of yourself that you can't see, God has gave it physical manifestation in your counterpart, which is that woman. And if you look at her with the respect that you would give your mother, that you would give your grandmother, that you would give your auntie, now you're starting to tap into the beginning stages of true love and respect for that woman. Because you're going to protect your mother, you're going to protect your grandmother, you're going to protect your auntie, you're going to protect your sister. Now, as you grow and develop, learn how to protect your Black woman. You see? And when we start learning how to protect her, then okay, she's been made other than herself, because she's been allowed, as we have gone through this oppression under this Caucasian, under this white man, the prize of that oppression has been our woman. So our woman has always known by the nature of God, God created her for a man. You can't deny that. He created Adam, and then he gave Adam Eve. And they put it in a crude way that woman, Eve, came from the rib of Adam. So many people will say, well, your rib is crooked, so the woman's always going to be crooked. And that's why the man got to straighten her out. Well, the minister takes us deeper than that. He says, no, the woman ain't crooked, you know? And what God is showing you in the essence that the theologians have tampered with in scripture is that by them saying that the woman came from the rib of Adam, he's showing you that that God is man, and from that man who is the originator, he looked into himself and found another self and gave it form and manifestation, and that's the woman. So we're taught that the womb of man is that woman that comes from the Creator. All right. So when it comes down to that, we understand, if I'm looking at the woman from there, Allah says in the Holy Quran that, oh, you who believe, keep your duty to your Lord, who created you from a single essence and created your mate of the same kind. And from these two spread many men and women. So if we're all from the Creator, then the male and the female is from the Creator. Then with me giving respect always to the Creator, then when I look at my woman, I'm looking at another side of myself. Now I have a duty to protect her, to respect her, but how do I keep control? Well, what kind of control you talking about, brother? Because we don't supposed to be controlling our women. They ain't our maids. They ain't our slaves. See, and that's where the problem comes in at. Because the control that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches us of is by the law and order and rules of God. If we're going to relate to one another and we see God as our benefactor, we see God as our source, as the center of our life, then we strive to live according to his laws, his standards, his rules, his way of life. So anytime the woman gets out of order or the man gets out of order, we pull each other back into order according to the standard of God. And if we're going to argue against the standard of God, when your woman calls you back to the standard or your man calls you woman back to the standard, then we're going to have a serious problem, because now we're looking at someone that's in rebellion to God, and then that's a ground for divorce. So the Black family has been broken up from that. And that's what we have to get the Black family back to. The Black man has to get a better understanding of himself and an understanding of his, as he relates to God, and an understanding of his woman as she relates to God, and so that we can come together with a better respect. But also there are training that has to take place with that. You know, I remember when I was young in the 70s, coming through junior high school and then going into high school, we had home economic classes. And the home economic classes was only for the females. And I remember it so well because as a young boy, we used to always be peeping through the window because there were so many fine sisters in the class, but we couldn't go in there. But what was home economics about? It was preparing the young woman for a major part of her life, which is dealing with the economics of the home. That's where she get her managing skills at. That's where she gets her supervisory skills at. That's where she gets her CEO skills at, because the home is the base where she's to spring forth from and do her work out in the world. But if you don't know how to keep the home right, if you don't know how to keep the home clean and keep it managed and make your home a heaven for your children and your husband, then when you go out there, how are you going to manage the society? How are you going to manage the other people in society that you have to deal with in regards to your livelihood and so forth? And if that man is not dealing right in his relation to God as being one that has been given power, dominion, and rulership, who's developing the nature of power in the Black man? Who's developing the nature of dominion in the Black man? Who's developing the nature of rulership in the Black man? He gets around, he's trying to practice rulership, dominion, and power, but he don't have no knowledge, so he look crazy as hell. And when that Black woman goes against his demand, he don't have the wisdom to know how to bring it into control, so he starts using his fist to live in her mouth like a dentist. And the white man keeps that kind of dysfunction going on. And when you say, well, brother, what do you mean the white man keeps that dysfunction going on? Because he's always made under this oppression a way for our woman to move freely in his society as long as she's working for him, but keep the Black man back so that he would not be able to make the money that's needed for him to take his rightful place as provider in the household, so that he can be a proper protector and secure and give security to the woman. Because the security of the woman is really found in God, who is a man, but he gives her a man in his image and after his likeness. And that's who the Black man is. He's in the image and likeness of God. But the sad part of it is that this white man has made him to shirk God and look at the white man as God. And then give us a white Jesus and give us everything white. You know what I mean? And so it goes right back to that, okay, if you're looking at that man as your standard, but yet he keeps pushing you back so that you can't do what you need to do, then stop looking to him and look to the real God. We don't need the white man to give us a job. Once you start knowing God and knowing yourself, you can make a job for yourself. When you start looking at nature and understanding what's happening with nature, you know, no matter how bad things may be, there are birds that still eat. There are stray cats that still eat. There are stray dogs that still eat, because they're living according to the nature in which God created them. And as long as they don't go against their nature, God always provides. So what about the Black man and woman coming into their true nature? Then the God will provide for us the more that we start living according to our nature. And so this thing that goes on in the household with Black male and female relationships, a large part of why it's the way it is because we haven't been taught the proper way on how to relate to one another. And that proper way of relating to one another is first getting a proper relationship with God through the knowledge of self and the knowledge of God. Then we start learning the nature of each other. And that's what we learn in the mosque. And that's why when we come from our different classes, and that's why I mentioned that home economics class, because that's a separate class for women. At a certain point, the male got to be separated from the female, and the female got to be separated from the male, so that they can be taught and trained and come back together with a better respect for one another in their own standard of life.
Brother Minister Henry.
Yes, sir.
Last two questions. Understanding Minister Louis Farrakhan. July 4th, he makes a presentation. I'm going to use a Negro approach. And he comes out and talks against vaccines. What's up with that?
Yes, sir. Real quickly. The minister makes the statement about vaccines, but he always backs it up with references. You know, we have a history with America, with what they did with the Native Americans in terms of dealing with chicken pox, smallpox, and blankets. And we have a history with America and what they did with us, with the giving us cancer through the polio vaccine, the practice that they did upon us with giving our people syphilis through the Tuskegee experiment, you know, and then coming all the way down the line and dealing with AIDS and Ebola and other things of that nature. Then why the hell would we trust their vaccine? Especially when we already know that through Henry Kissinger, there was a plan put in place back in the 70s that's still on file to this very day on a way to be able to call the populations of third world nations by 2 to 3 billion people. And it was going to be done through food, through Planned Parenthood and things of that nature. And we see all that going on in our community. Why would we trust a vaccine just because they're saying that it's good for us when we have all this history to show that they've lied to us so many times as they experimented on us?
Okay. And Farrakhan is a great guy. He talks black, but you know, he changed up on us. He embraced Scientology. What's up with that?
Well, you know, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan didn't embrace Scientology. He embraced a program called Dianetics that comes from the Church of Scientology. He did not embrace the religion or way of life that is preached through Scientology. That program of Dianetics was a program that he saw fit that could help our people condition be healed from all the scars that they have experienced in their personal lives over the years. And these are scars that are still sitting in us to this very day. And through that program of Dianetics, the minister felt that if we was to practice that program, we could use that. So he said to us, and I would say to anyone else, you know, many of us go to college and we pay to take college courses. And we don't agree with everything that the professor is saying to us in that college course. But we're not going to stand up and go and battle toe-to-toe with the professor in the college course, because we'll fail the course based off of our disagreement on one thing that he's saying. We want to pass that class. We didn't come there to the course to judge the professor. We came to that course to take the class, pass the class that will help us to go further in our life. Well, that was the same thing when it came down to Dianetics. He was not giving up the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad in the Nation of Islam. He just saw it as a tool that can be used to help us get rid of some of the impediments that is stopping us from being a full-fledged member and useful tool in the Nation of Islam.
Excellent. The last one. Young boys, young guys, young adults, old adults, Chicago, New York, Detroit, Los Angeles, doesn't matter. The use of guns, just, you know, just shooting into a crowd, if indeed all of those shootings is coming from Black people. So we're going to deal with what we understand coming from Black people. What is it that Minister Farrakhan says that we need to be about in order to curb the killings within our community?
We need to go among our people and teach them the love of self and show an example of the love of self. Be that those that are standing in the community to help stem the tide of violence under the title of making our communities a safe and decent place to live in. You know, the word that you use, you know, and when you said if, this is really all coming from our, you know, youth that are in the community shooting and whatnot, that's something that we have to look into. And I know we don't have time to get into all that. But if we're saying that, you know, what we're looking at now with this tide of shootings that has gone on in the past 30 days, between June and now, it has risen so much, it hasn't even been 1 month yet, really. Then that is something that the minister has been teaching on since going all the way back from 1989, that the Black youth are being set up by the US government for slaughter. And we see it very, very clearly. And we can go through all those years, but just looking at it right now, we don't manufacture guns. How are the guns getting into their hands? And then when a young man has a gun in his hand, you know, a young man with low self-esteem, a young man that's living in poverty, a young man that doesn't see a way to do better for himself, can't get a job or haven't been trying to look for a job, dropped out of high school, so he kind of knocks off his chances of being qualified for certain jobs that would make the kind of money that he needs to be able to get on in his life outside of his mother and father's apartment or household. When we start looking at that, a person in that condition who's a man, young boy coming up, the nature of himself, as we spoke about earlier, is to have power, to have dominion over something that is productive, and to be a producer, and to be in rulership. Now, when you don't have the source to make that happen, then your ego that centralizes everything around itself becomes entrapped in the power of a gun. Because as long as he has that gun in his hand, that's an extension of his power that he doesn't really have. And he noticed that when I pull that gun out, people bow, people get out of the way, people respect me, so I'm gonna keep my gun. And then you match that up with the frustration that his nature is pulling on in him, because his nature is telling him, he don't understand it, but his nature is telling him something is missing. There's something that you should be doing that you're not doing. And he can't explain it, but he knows he doesn't feel complete. And that's what most young men are wrestling with. Why am I not able to do this? Why I don't have this? Why I don't have that? And so we got to get in the community and answer the question that is in their minds that they're not asking outright, because someone else is coming with a different answer. And the person that's coming with a different answer is just as ignorant as the one that is looking for the answer. When you got groups of youth that's moving like that, they look to each other for answers. And if the blind lead the blind, they both fall in the ditch. So we got to be out there in the community standing in that tide. But one other thing I would say to that, remember, brother, time dictates the agenda. And this is not on our time, this is really on God's time. And the 400-year prophecy that we were talking about from the scripture, in that 400-year prophecy, there's also a time of 60 years of grace, not to exceed 70 years of grace. Our people don't know nothing about that. That window is closing right now. And God says, if you don't want to listen to my messengers and you love to shed blood, then I'll give you your own blood to drink, and it'll be like sweet wine. And blood will rise up to the horse's bridle. And this is the period of time that we have entered into. And we have a short window of time to be able to get our people out of it. And I think that window is good and still open as long as Minister Farrakhan's voice and presence is still among us. As he said in that message on July 4th, once God removes me from among you, there's going to be a lot more death and destruction. So those of us that are with him and those of us that are inspired by him, we need to get busy and go after our people like we've never done before.
Brother Minister Henry, how do you're at mosque number 7C in Brooklyn? Is there a information number that folks can plug into or email address?
Yes, there is. We have a website that's NOI. I'm trying to find it real quick. You know, our mosque.
You're tuned in to GHCR, Grant Houses Community Radio, the soul of the Upper West Side.
Our mosque is located.
This is Brother Leroy with Brother Minister Henry Student Minister Henry of mosque number 7C in Brooklyn, USA, New York City. Go ahead, my brother.
Our mosque is located at 202 Pennsylvania Avenue, and the phone number is 718-342-1900. But we also are we also have a website, and it's Muhammad Mosque. It's in the Nation of Islam Mosque, 7C, Brooklyn, New York. If you look up on the website, you'll get a lot of information for us and by us, that you can be able to tune in to the messages. You can be able to get in touch with us. If you want to join the Nation of Islam, you can come through that website and, give us your information, and we'll contact you and get in touch with you. We still have orientation classes and everything going on via Zoom, of course, because of the restrictions of COVID-19, but we're still striving to function under this new way in America.
The website again.
It's Nation of Islam Muhammad Mosque, 7C, Brooklyn, New York.
And last but not least, there's a big wedding taking place at Mosque number 7 this week. One of the most important weddings in New York City. That's Brother Joe and Sister Anise.
Yes, sir. And it's something because, all praise is due to Allah. I'm very happy for them. And we'll be having a ceremony for them tomorrow at 2 p.m. It'll be a little private setting, but they're coming together in the name of Allah and the holy matrimony. And that's always a blessing, because for so many years, in our history as Black people in America, we weren't allowed to marry. And I think that really has taken effect on many of us. It's not enough of us getting married for the right reasons anymore and with the right mindset. So these two coming together, this is definitely a match made in heaven. And so I look forward to being able to officiate over their nuptials, as we would say, tomorrow at 2 p.m., be it the will of Allah.
Brother Minister Henry of
Yes,
Mosque
sir.
number 7C, thank you very much for your time, your insights. May Allah continue to bless you and your family and the members of Mosque number 7C in Brooklyn, USA. God bless you, my brother.
Thank you, brother. And thank you for having me at the Wisdom Table. May God continue to bless you all with success. Love you, brother.
Thank you, sir. Brothers and sisters, this has been the Wisdom Table, coming to you from Grand Houses in Harlem, USA. Independent radio, sponsored by the Resident Association of the Grant Houses in Harlem, USA, 125th Street and Amsterdam Avenue. God bless you all with a wonderful and fantastic day. Please share this video when you see it on YouTube. You'll see it on YouTube soon. And hey, make history with it. God bless you all. Peace.